everyone. Welcome to Crime in Court. This is the 1996 Menendez brothers retrial. We are reading through the transcript of California versus Erik and Lyle Menendez on trial for the homicides of their parents, Kitty and Jose, which took place in 1989. The first trial took place in 93, which ended in a mistrial. We are in the middle of the state's case. Actually, we're near the end, I should say, of the state's case. And Dr. Roger McCarthy is on the stand. He is a mechanical engineer, not a biomechanical engineer. He's testifying to the ballistics, uh, the physics as to how the bodies moved within the shooting. However, he is not necessarily qualified to do so. He's also testifying as a ballistics expert, which he's not an expert. He's not qualified to do so. He's also testifying as if he's a medical expert. He's testifying. He's also very evasive. He's not answering questions, and he's making this last days on the stand because he's just not answering or arguing just to argue with semantics and things like that. So he's a difficult witness, but Leslie is doing a really good job of kind of tearing him apart. So let's get started. I'm going to continue where we left off. We were on the we're on the morning or coming back after the lunch break. Sorry, I should say. I got to get resituated here. This is the third time, by the way, I'm recording this. Just issues, my own, self, what's the word I'm looking for? Like my own fault regarding I just recorded or I paused and accidentally hit the button multiple times, and really, when I thought I was paused, I stopped it, and then when I went to hit record, I was paused and rambled on for an hour and however long, and it didn't get recorded. The second time I tried recording it, it just decided, my equipment just decided to give up. So that's what happened. So I'm kind of annoyed that I have to record this the third time now. Apologies that it is so late. I didn't mean this was supposed to be on Tuesday. Now it's getting aired on Thursday. So apologies, but that's just how life happens sometimes. So we're going to continue on with Dr. Roger McCarthy. Shrinking myself here. Please hit the like button if you haven't done so already. State's Case, Part 46, Roger McCarthy, in the middle of cross examination with Leslie Abramson. Like I said, we're coming back from the lunch break, and here we go. All right. The court says everyone is present. We'll have the jury out, please. All right, everyone is present. We will resume with the cross examination, and we continue here. Ms. Abramson says, Dr. McCarthy, we're talking about now injuries to Mrs. Menendez that you have called shot number 4, okay? Okay. You recall that this is what the coroner calls and what Dr. Lawrence called number 2. Do you recall that? I think that's correct, yes. Yes, it's number 2. Yes, it's number 2, but it's Mr. Golden, not Mr. Warren. Who the hell is Mr. Warren? I said the coroner. Oh, I used the word coroner. Okay. You understand Dr. Golden is the coroner in this case? Oh, yes. Okay. I mean, I didn't mean to be obtuse. Okay. What kind of answer is that? All right. Now you have shown this in the diagram, and Mr. Levin, could you set up A on the board and B on the other board? Thank you. Good. Thank you. That's okay. I think it will stay. Thank you. One of the jurors can't see. All right. Everything that gets said in the court gets written down. Now, your illustration for what you call shot number 4 shows this shot coming in almost perpendicular to the front of Mrs. Menendez's face, correct? Yes. And the way you've demonstrated it, it shows that the shot is coming at least predominantly, if not exclusively, from the right side. Predominantly right to left, more than front to back, yes. And you realize, of course, that Dr. Golden described this wound and he dissected it inside as front to back with no angulation left to right. I can't. Try page 4. I'm looking at page 4 and I don't see any mention to dissection. Did he characterize it front to back? It was the dissection that I couldn't support. The paragraph, first of all, there's a paragraph that says the trajectory is front to back without any angulation, deviation determinant, correct? Yes. And the paragraph above that shows what the subsequent autopsy, you understand an autopsy as a surgical examination, don't you? It's an examination depending on the wounds. It may or may not involve surgery. Yes. He's showing that the wound enters from the skin. That's what you can see from the outside, right? Yes. Soft tissue and bone in the face, correct? That's what he's written. And it talks about the pathways intersecting pathways from other wounds. Yes. And do you understand that to see pathways, he had to get in there, right? I guess that's not my understanding. If he inserted probes and saw they crossed the words dissection, you don't know. You don't understand the coroners dissect that you don't understand that coroners dissect wound paths. Objection. Assumes facts, not an evidence. Court says, well, it misstates the witness's testimony. All right. Is it your understanding? We'll strike that. Do you have an understanding about what coroners do to examine wound paths inside human bodies? I have a general understanding based on having read autopsies. And is it your general understanding that they cut and look? Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't, depending on the wound. Okay. Now, did this shot take her right eye out? I think so. You think so? Uh huh. Were you at the autopsy? No. Is there any mention whatsoever in this description of this wound that it damaged the eye itself? No, and I guess totally just basing on the pictures. It doesn't say anything about damage to the eye or the eye is taken out, does it? No. Mr. Khan says objection, vague as to what is meant by the term taken out. The court says only the answer will stand. So you described it before in our pretrial hearing as taking out her right eye, haven't you? I don't remember doing so, but I think it did. But like I said, all I have is the photographs. And so you made certain assumptions based on photographs, even if those assumptions had no evidence to support them. Isn't that true? I wouldn't call a photograph no evidence. Would it refresh your recollection as to whether you testified before that it took out her eye if I show you your testimony from the pretrial hearing? If you want me to also, I believe it did. If you also want me to confirm, did I say that in the pretrial hearing? Surely. Just show me the testimony. And Miss Abramson says, could I show the witness page 35, 435? You can start here. The witness says, yes. Miss Abramson says, you did so testify. Yes. So he testified that the eye was taken out, although it's not in anybody's report or testimony that we know of. So now you heard Dr. Lawrence testify, didn't you? Not all of his testimony, no. So now it's very convenient that he was supposed to be in the room when Dr. Lawrence was testifying. He was in the room for most of it, and he says he did have to leave the room for some, but he can never recall anything that Dr. Lawrence testified to. And remember, he's not a medical expert, so he's supposed to be using the medical expert's opinions to base his opinions on. But he's not necessarily. And he's just like, yeah, no, I don't remember Dr. Lawrence saying that. I wasn't there. I don't recall. He's just being very, very evasive. So let's see what else he evades in his questions here. Do you know you still haven't read his transcripts? No. So he had the opportunity to read his transcripts for the things that he missed, but he still didn't do that. Do you know if he testified that it took out her right eye, to use a more medical way of putting it, or refer to that at all? I don't know one way or the other. What if he didn't? Objection, vague. Court says the question is vague. If Dr. Lawrence did not testify that her right eye was destroyed by this wound, then are you still going to assume it was? Objection calls for speculation whether Dr. Lawrence was asked that question. Sustained. Is it your understanding Dr. Lawrence described each wound? He discussed them generally. I don't know if he described each wound. Okay. Do you know if he described an injury to the eye itself? I don't know one way or the other. Does it matter if he had? If in his testimony he did not indicate there was any damage to the eye itself, would that matter to your assumption that the eye was destroyed? Objection assumes facts not in evidence that he did so testify. Ms. Abramson says, I think he did, Your Honor. The court says, well, regardless of that, unless there was some reference one way or the other to the eye, it is meaningless. So, Ms. Abramson says, I believe there was a reference to the eye. The court says, perhaps you can identify what it was. Ms. Abramson says, all right, I'll look it up. Now, do you have in front of you, I put some x-ray photographs. Yes, I haven't lost them, he says. Okay, and would you find, just hold that for a moment. What's in front of you? Let me read the number back from the back. What's in front of you is exhibit number 174. Do you recognize that? Yes. And were you here when the red circles were placed on that? I don't recollect being so. And do you know who placed the red circles on that? I do not. You strike that. You scanned photographs of the x-rays into a computer and placed them on CD-ROM, correct? Yes. I'm not going to ask you to. Oh, okay. When you did that, you gave them certain numbers, the x-ray photographs. Yes. And what number did you give that particular photograph? I'd have to look. Why don't you look at it? It's there. It's printed out on the photograph. Oh, geez, 8 x-ray. And what is 8 x-ray, Dr. McCarthy? It is an x-ray of Mary Menendez's skull primarily. It also captured part of her shoulder and neck. And from what direction is that x-ray taken? Back to front or front to back? Face to back, I think. Did you previously testify it was front to back? I don't remember doing so, but if I said that, it's incorrect. You have no training in reading x-rays. I mean medical x-rays, that's correct. So you're saying you have no recollection of having so testified? That is true. I have no recollection of so testifying, but, well, would it refresh your recollection if I showed you your testimony from the pretrial hearing? Concerning what I testified to? Surely. Concerning 8 x-ray. That's what that's called, isn't it? 8 x-ray. That's the number that's printed out on it, so I assume you're correct. Well, let me show you page 35432 and ask you to read starting at line 24. The witness does so. Yeah, I apparently said back to front, but it is front to back. Were you here when Dr. Lawrence testified that that was front to back? No. And you weren't here when Dr. Lawrence marked it, correct? That's correct. Well, I don't think I was. You don't remember. In all honesty, I was thinking about other things at the time. I can't say I was paying attention to the testimony at every point. Sir, you were in the room to listen to his testimony, and you're saying, now I don't know if I was paying attention the whole time. I was thinking of other things, he says. This witness is bad. I mean, bad for the state, good for the defense, but wasn't enough. The reason that you were here while Dr. Lawrence was testifying was so that you could hear what he said, so that you could say that you relied on it. Isn't that true? No. I would have been here for his direct if that would have been the thought. I was here when Dr. Lawrence testified because I thought he was going on for a short time in the morning and then I'd be on. So did he only come for the cross-examination? Because he says I would have been here for his direct if that had been the thought. So he says, no, I didn't come just to listen to him. Otherwise, if that were true, I would have come on direct. So I guess he's saying he was only here on the cross examination because he thought he was going to be put on the stand next, is his answer. Okay, now according to your view of this shot, which you call shot number 4, causes Mrs. Menendez to fall flat on her back, correct? I postulate this is the shot that makes her prostrate, yes. And she falls onto her back, correct? She doesn't necessarily have to fall that way, she just has to end up there for the rest of what you're about to state to work. It's the most sensible geometric explanation. It's not the only one, but it's the only one you chose, correct? Yes. Now, why is it, in your opinion, that this shot causes her to hit the deck? Well, because I think the later shots, again, in my opinion, indicate a prone body, and she's got to get prone somehow, and this shot being at the face looked like it was the type and character and injury level that could do that. So he's just speculating because she was shot in the face and it looked gruesome. He thought that that would put her on the ground. That's his medical opinion there. Well, did you indicate in the report before we get there on an injury level, you mean it was so serious an injury that it could cause anyone to fall after receiving it? Is that what you mean? I don't know if it would cause anyone. I think it's highly plausible that it did cause her to fall. And is that because there were shots in the frontal lobes of the brain from this? Not necessarily because of anything in the lobes of the brain, but because in my opinion, it's a severe shot to the face. Okay. I mean, one can only speculate how it felt. One can only speculate how it felt. That's coming from the witness. Um, which should be struck probably because he's speculating and it's kind of uh, prejudicial. But she just strikes right back and says, one could only speculate how it happened, can't one? So he says one can only speculate how it felt. She strikes back and says one can only speculate how it happened. The exact diagram is a speculation. Your depiction of what happened is speculation because you can't tell because of the severity of the wounds and the number of the injuries and wounds. You can't tell which one came first for the most part. You can speculate, but you can't be sure. And you don't know how they were standing, sitting, none of it. Actually, to be honest, the forensics show that it's probably more plausible that they were standing, but we'll get there hopefully with the defense witnesses on that. So she says one can only speculate how it happened. He says, well, I mean, no, she was shot by number 4 Buck in the face. I mean, precise angle is what you're discussing. We're also discussing the precise sequence, aren't we? Yes, when in the order she was shot in the face. And you previously testified that shot 4 did not necessarily happen next. It could have been 5 or 6 that happened next. Isn't that true? In point of fact, I can't absolutely positively guarantee this one happened here. That is correct. In fact, Dr. Lawrence testified that let's see if we make sure we're all talking about the same thing. That number 4 was perfectly consistent with her standing up. Correct? As you have called, or as you have her. Yes. Then number 5 could have happened, which is the next one where you have her lying down. Number 5 could have happened with her standing up, right? That's what he said. My recollection isn't serving me very well. Of course not. I don't recollect the Q&A on that. So of course he doesn't remember Dr. Lawrence saying that they could have been standing, and it's very possible that they were. So you don't remember him even demonstrating, holding his arm when he was testifying as to how she could have been holding her arm and standing up when she received that wound. You don't remember. There was a discussion that I remember. I just cannot do it good enough to repeat the testimony for you. In any event, you've conceded that you can't tell if number 4 preceded 5 or 6, right? That's correct. Obviously, if she was prone, you could do this shot while she's on the ground. And so you think number 4 was on the ground? No, no, no. I'm saying could 4 have happened after? I think 5 was on the ground, but could 4 have happened on the ground and later in the sequence? Yes. And that's not what I'm asking you though. Objection, argumentative, sustained. I'm stating, and you can disagree, that 4, 5, and 6 were testified to by Dr. Lawrence as being capable of occurring while she was standing. My recollection is the testimony was more complex than that, but I know there was discussion of that topic. So he just can't say, yes, Dr. Lawrence said that. Well, let me ask you your opinion. Are you saying shots 5 and 6 could not possibly have happened while she was standing up? Objection, compound and part of which was asked and answered. Sustained. Could number 5 have happened while she was standing up? Possibly, yes, but it would be a torturous shooting geometry. What about 6? Would that have happened while she was standing up? Again, possibly just a torturous shooting geometry. What the hell does that even mean? The geometry is difficult. He's got to say the geometry, it's a torturous shooting geometry. This guy, he really irks me. If number 4, 5, and 6 are all happening while she's standing up, as far as the order, it's true they could have happened in any order, correct? Especially simultaneously, right? Again, it is physically possible you could come up with a torturous shooting geometry that would work. I just don't think it was likely. Well, I'm saying you can point to any evidence that rule. You can't point, or can you? I'm asking, can you point to any rule, any Oh my God, it's easy for me to talk today. Miss Abramson says, I'm asking, can you point to any evidence that rules it out? I can point to evidence that makes it so difficult that I think it unlikely, but I can't rule it out physically. Now let's get back to shot number 4. You testified on direct that you were accepting Dr. Lawrence's angle. Remember that? I said, if you want to use something a little more forward, that's fine, yes. It's not a matter of what we want to use. Are you relying on Dr. Lawrence or are you relying on yourself? That wasn't the point that wasn't what the testimony was about. It was about, did I have an opinion about the angle being precisely to the wound slope? And the answer is the remaining answer does not permit that precision. Dr. Lawrence testified this angle is not correct and redrew it. Do you remember that? There were multiple things that he found discrepancies to, and that was one of them. He did not agree to the angle of one of the diagrams or illustrations that uh, Dr. McCarthy made. He says he testified, I think, he believed it was a little more forward, but he thought the difference was not significant. Well, it doesn't matter whether he thinks it's significant. Objection. Ms. Abramson says, strike that. I'll withdraw that. You don't have any medical expertise. You understand that for this purpose, objection argumentative, sustained. Do you believe you're testifying in these proceedings as a medical expert? No. Do you understand that Dr. Lawrence's testimony was supposed to provide the medical basis for yours? Is that your understanding? In part, yes. Okay. So what's the other part? I mean, I know you're also relying on the coroner, but what else? Like your own non-medical expertise, is that the other part that you're relying on? That's what I'd like to know. And is it your understanding that Dr. Lawrence rendered a medical opinion that this line you drew in shot 4 is not accurate? That is not a fair summary of his testimony. So you disagree with that? I disagree with your summary, not with his testimony. Let's do this. If Dr. Lawrence believes the angle, as he testified, was only slightly to the right, do you accept that? You mean essentially front to back? He said essentially front to back, only slightly to the right. That's what he testified to. Objection misstates the testimony, and the judge sustains this. But I know that Dr. Lawrence did testify to that, and I don't know why he sustained that, so whatever. Um, what's up with that, Stanley Weisberg? Ms. Abramson says, if Dr. Lawrence testified that the angle was only slightly to the right, not extremely to the right, as you have drawn it, do you accept his medical opinion on that? I was here for his testimony, and I accept his testimony. It's the violence that your restatement does to my recollection of it that I have a problem with. He doesn't like the way she worded her question. Let's go back and see her question. She said, if Dr. Lawrence testified that the angle was only slightly to the right, not extremely to the right, as you have drawn, do you accept his medical opinion? It's the violence that your restatement does to my recollection. What? This guy has an ego the size of Philadelphia. I don't know why Philadelphia came to mind, but that's, I don't know. I live in Chicago. I've been to Philly, but I don't know why that came to mind. Anyways, so you don't recollect it that way? Not the way you've recited it. That is correct. If he testified to an angle different than yours, do you accept his angle, or do you still think yours is right? I think I testified earlier that given what I heard him testify to, I was comfortable with his angle. The question isn't comfortable. The question isn't comfortable. Whatever, buddy. This guy, he's just got to argue. Do you still think your angle is right? Let me ask you. The evidence does not permit the precision to say I'm right and he's wrong. He could very well be right and I'm wrong. It's angled somewhat. Well, you're not showing it angled somewhat in 4B, you're showing it almost perpendicular. Objection, argumentative, overruled. I'm showing it more angled than Dr. Lawrence testified, but I'm comfortable with his angle. You didn't change it. I didn't go redraw the diagram. No. The way you've drawn it, how do you explain the injuries on the other side of her nose? I don't think the nose stopped Appellate. If we're talking about the same defect, we'd have to go to the picture now. He's trying again to direct the testimony and saying, put this on the screen, put this picture on the screen, which is going to show the jury the horrendous photos of the decedent or one of the decedents and trying to elicit some kind of emotional response by showing that. Because when you show the pictures to the jury, they're going to feel a certain way and they're going to want someone, whether it's the defendant in the defendant's seat or someone else, they're going to want to, you know, punish whoever. Sorry, I'm trying to get the blanket on the dog and she's just not laying down. Lay down, dog. Thank you. Um, so yeah, the jury might want to punish someone whether, the evidence is there or not by seeing those photos. Not that it's, right or wrong, it's just human nature that, they're playing on the emotions of the jury, which I don't like. He's trying to get those pictures up in front of the jury as much as possible. I wonder if possibly he was instructed by the prosecutors to do that. I don't know, because it seems to be his go-to. But I want to reiterate, the person who has the stage right now is the attorney. She's the one asking the questions. She should be directing, if she asks a question that only needs a yes or no response and he rambles on, she should be able to, strike that as non-responsive or whatever, it just called for a yes or no and things like that. So she should be able to control the room. She controls what exhibits get put up there. She controls what the jury is seeing and what questions she's asking the jury. But here he's like, "No, let's put again, he's trying to control the courtroom and bring it back to this image, which I don't like. This guy really bothers me as a witness. So he wants to go to the picture. She says there is not necessarily there are defects on her left cheek, buckshot defects on her left cheek. Do you remember those? I guess. I certainly remember some buckshot defects on the left side of her face. I don't recollect as I sit here those on the cheek. If we get the photo out, again, he's asking for the photo, if you can show me the one that you're referring to. She says, do you recollect a defect at the tip of her nose? Yes, well, again, I'm not comfortable with precisely the tip. Again, he's just arguing with semantics. But there are pellet defects on her nose. Do you accept Dr. Golden's description that there are buckshot defects on both the right side of her face and the left side of her face? Meaning she would have had to be standing like front, and turned. There are defects on both sides of her face caused by buckshot, yes. And is it your opinion that the buckshot that caused it is what we're seeing on this illustration 4B? Yes. Now did you hear Dr. Lawrence testify that he felt that the buckshot did not penetrate very far into her head from this shot, from the wounds that she sustained? I don't specifically have a recollection of his testimony, but I agree with that. So again, he doesn't remember. Okay, and is it your opinion that this shot caused the penetration of the frontal lobes of her brain? There's one pellet, I believe, up near the frontal lobe, but I can't tell you positively for sure it got there from this shot. And what is the frontal lobe, Dr. McCarthy? What I'm referring to is the front area of the brain. It's a part of the brain itself, correct? Yes. The brain is made of very soft tissue, right? It's certainly softer than muscle, yes. Well, he didn't know that breast tissue is dense and could make pellets stop fast, make it more difficult for a pellet to get through it. He didn't know that, but he knew that the brain was soft tissue, so that's at least good. And is it your belief that a pellet penetrated the frontal lobe area of her brain? Not that it necessarily penetrated the frontal lobe exactly, but it's in that area, yes. In that area, inside the skull or outside the skull? I don't think I have enough precision on the x-rays to answer that. How about Dr. Lawrence's testimony who said there's a pellet sitting right under the skin outside the skull? Do you remember him saying that? I do not. Of course not. You did indicate in your report, however, that Mrs. Menendez was incapacitated due to the shots, plural, in the frontal lobes, plural, of her brain. Do you remember that? You're on page 1? Page 2. Page 2? It's the first sentence on the second paragraph at page 1 of your report. Oh, okay. It's page 1. That's page 2 on my report, says Miss Abramson. He says, okay, but the cover page doesn't carry a number. I understand now why I was. Okay, yes. He just has to argue. Yes, that's what was written there, right? Yes. I'm clipping up this exhibit number 171, and exhibit 174. Do you recognize 171 is the x-ray from the left side of Mrs. Menendez's head? Yes. And 174 is the x-ray that is front to back of her skull? Yes. Do you see the circle that looks like it's on the forehead between the two eye orbits with the number 1 on it? The lower? In both, here, she points. Yes. And on the lower one, there. She points again. He says, I can't see the circle on that lower one, but that's all right. Well, I'll show it to you. I'm not doubting you. You were not here when Dr. Lawrence drew these red circles and made that one around these things, were you? I don't recollect being here, that's correct. Then you didn't hear him testify that this is the pellet that you think might have been in the frontal lobe area of the brain, isn't it? Yes. And Dr. Lawrence, let me ask you a hypothetical. If hypothetically Dr. Lawrence testified that his reading of the x-ray shows this pellet didn't enter the skull at all, that it's just below the skin, does that, in your opinion, render incorrect your conclusion that there were pellets in the frontal lobe of the brain? It would render a conclusion that a pellet interacted with the frontal lobe incorrect. That is true. So Dr. Lawrence, right? Dr. Lawrence is saying that according to his reading of the x-rays, the pellet did not enter or penetrate the skull. So it didn't enter through the bone and penetrate the brain. It stopped within the skin of just below the skin of the her forehead or wherever it's located. All right, so he says it would render a conclusion that a pellet interacted. Incorrect. Yes. So he's agreeing that would mean his opinion was incorrect. Not sorry. And is your opinion that any shot to the face, even when the pellets don't penetrate the cranial cavity, will cause someone to fall flat on their back? Not any shot, to be sure. I'm comfortable that this shot is severe enough. I mean, maybe he could testify to the force of it since he's a mechanical engineer and he understands force and energy and things like that, but I don't think that he can testify to the fact that it hit her in the head and it was obviously bad enough to make her fall to the ground. So then the other shots came after she was on the ground, is what he's saying. And that's why it's important, because if she didn't fall to the ground and the other shots took place while she was standing up, then he's wrong about all of it. Um, where do we leave off? So he says, not any shot to be sure. I'm comfortable that this shot is severe enough. She asks, and that's based on what? If we get a photo of the face up there, again, he's asking for the photo of her face. The degree of destruction and damage to her face. Again, he's trying to bring the picture up, bring, the emotions up in the jury. She's onto him like the boss that she is, and she says, "You mean because it's ugly, that means it must have knocked her onto her back? Because it's an ugly wound, because it's a horrific looking, disgusting looking wound. It means that it knocked her over," is what he's saying. Or she's asking him. And he says, "No, I'm not relying on a momentum and hypothesis. It looks ugly because it was terribly destructive to large amounts of tissue." What large amounts of tissue? Why, on her face. How do you know that? Let's look at the picture. Again, that's like the fourth or fifth time he's asked to look at the picture, just in this seating, just in this line of questioning alone. So you can't tell by looking from the outside. Is that right? Well, part, but also because you can tell the changes. His um this is his answer. Although it says question, and this fooled me last time I read it. Um this is his answer. So she says you can't tell by looking from the outside. Is that right? He says, well, part, but also because you can tell the changes that have occurred to the structure of the face. I mean, the shot speaks for itself. It obviously was excruciatingly painful. Excuse me? I would move to strike that as beyond the witness's expertise. Yeah, yeah, that's what you do. The court says, all right, the reference to obviously terribly excruciating, and he repeats it, the judge repeats it. He says, however it was phrased, is stricken as non-responsive. Ms. Abramson says, thank you. Now, let me give you a hypothesis, Dr. McCarthy, that she is shot while standing up for shot 6 and shot 5 and number 4. Okay? If you wish me to assume that is the hypothetical, I will. And it is only after that she goes to the ground. Okay? So assume that 5, 6, and 7, 4, 5, and 6, she's standing. And then she goes to the ground. He asks, this is what I'm to assume for the hypothetical? That's what you're to assume for my hypothetical. And if you assume that for the hypothetical, would it make sense that if she placed her hand on the coffee table, would it make sense that if she placed her hand on the coffee table as she went down, it would leave a smear of blood if she placed her right hand? Nothing about what you've postulated in there, in that hypothetical, requires or renders impossible placing a bloody right hand on the coffee table. In other words, there's nothing about what you've said that entails that or rules it out. It's just an independent hypothesis, says the witness. Ugh. And you have seen up close of the coffee table that shows a very large area of what appears to be a smeared blood stain on the top surface. I have looked at the coffee table and there is evidence of blood on the surface, yes. I'm talking about uh what looks like not little round drops, but smears. My recollection is there's some areas on the coffee table that appear they could be smears. So let me show you this picture. I'm looking for the one that we had earlier. This is Exhibit 75. Can you see that area on the coffee table with the smears in Exhibit 75? I can see those areas that are darkened that you may be referring to. I can see areas that are darkened and that also may be the areas to which you are referring. I want to find a blow up. Remember the photograph I showed you when we were talking about dishes of ice cream? Yes. There was a close up of the table to the. Yes, it was. That showed those areas of smeared blood close up. Well, now you got me. I wasn't looking at that part of the picture. We're trying to find it again. In any event, nothing in the diagram or illustrations that you made ever show her coming in contact with the top of the coffee table, correct? When or where she put her hand, if she did come into contact, no. In fact, you never have Mr. Menendez getting off the couch, so he certainly didn't touch the top of the coffee table after he shot. No, part of him connected to him touched the coffee table after he was shot, correct. No part of him connected with the coffee table. So here's the close-up I was talking about. This is Exhibit 15. I think if you hold it this way, it probably orients the camera better. Look here. Yes. In fact, there's more than one area that has what appears to be smeared blood on top of the coffee table, isn't there? There's more than one area that appears to have blood. I guess it could be smeared. That's a little tough to determine. At least it was for me looking at it. So you chose not to mention it at all because you couldn't determine if it was smeared or dripped or what. One. And second, I can't tell it didn't come from Jose's head. I just didn't know where it came from. So we're looking at an area of blood, are we not, on the end of the coffee table, the eastern end, the part that's down near the left thumb, right? Yes. You think that that came from Jose's head? No, no, no. And then there's another area just a few inches away from the end of the coffee table, sort of in the zone in front of where Mr. Menendez's body is found. That was sort of a large area of blood, correct? Several inches in length. There are areas of blood there. What I'm uncomfortable about when you talk about large areas, you see the grain pattern of the table if is underneath the blood and how much of the dark spotting here it's pretty clear that dark spotting is blood. When you get over to here, the grain pattern on the table makes the interpretation difficult. Well, there's blood in this area, however much. Yes. And you think that might have come from his head? I certainly can't rule it out. You don't think it's more likely that it came from the fact that she was right opposite that area when she received several shots and tried to protect her fall by putting her hands out? There's no obvious hand shape to the stain, and if you look at the other droplets of blood on the surface, there are several directions indicated. I can't tell you from looking at it that your hypothesis is correct. I can't tell you from looking at it that the hypothesis isn't correct. There is not a handprint confirming your hypothesis. Well, did you look at the shoes? I looked at pictures of the shoes. The shoes are here. Have you looked at the shoes? Not while they've been here, no. Are there what appear to be round, dark spots on the top of the shoes? There was no round spotting on the top of the shoes that I saw in the photographs. That is my recollection. She was wearing, I believe, white, like Keds or whatever, like Ked-like type shoes or tennis shoes, whatever they were. And um, I mean, you would clearly see spots if they landed on her shoe. It's kind of odd that they didn't, to be honest. You would think, with all the spray and everything all over, you would think that there would be, but no. All right. And is there also what appears to be blood staining on the bottom of her shoe, her right leg as it comes through the coffee table? Yes, there does appear to be some blood on her shoe. Does that indicate to you in that photograph that she stepped in blood or had the bottom of her or had the bottom of her foot in blood at some point? He can't just say yes. Blood. Well, don't in order to have the bottom of your shoe in blood, don't you have to step in it? Oh, no, no. If you look at my figure down here, all you have to do is have your knees raised or foot and you will have blood on the shoe. What? That makes no sense. Well, it has to be below. Certainly, you just don't have to stand, is my point. I didn't say stand, I said stepped. At least the bottom surface of the shoe had to come on top of the blood already below it. That's correct. That just doesn't require standing or stepping. Okay? And if you have her standing up and then immediately receiving shot 4 and falling backwards, what blood is on her foot? Oh, I'm not saying she necessarily picked up the blood on the bottom of her feet in the shot, although she stands up and she has 13 pellet wounds in her left breast. So there is no shortage of sources for blood to be getting on the floor, copiously, even in this position. Can I testify that the blood's that that's the blood that she stepped in? No. Well, if she just stood up and blood was coming down, you would expect it to hit the top of her shoes, certainly. Some you would expect to see. You wouldn't expect it to creep underneath her feet. She would have to move her feet to where it had fallen on the carpet at some point. At least he admits that she would have to move her foot to the blood. He just can't say she stepped on it. All right. Now let's take a look, or let's take a look at 6. Think I'm done with 4 and 5. Were you here when Dr. Lawrence, by the way, testified that it would take a very little movement, either from a shooter or from Mrs. Menendez, for her to be basically standing still in the same position when she received what you're calling shots 5 and 6? I think he was talking about movement of her arm, and I don't recollect if he said very little movement, but it wouldn't have much movement. It wouldn't have to move terribly much. Do you remember him simulating and being the shooter and going bang bang? Do you remember that? I guess I don't. Now you're saying that number 5 had to be delivered when she was horizontal, or have you backed off of that? No, I don't think I ever said had to be. It's just to get the weapon low enough to shoot her standing up to make the trajectory to come out right. I just think it unlikely. Now, this is a shot to her right forearm and it goes up to her right upper arm, correct? That's correct. And you hypothesize that this shot also forces her arm to move up to put her right hand over the clavicle to receive that wound. Is that correct? Yes, I do. Now, if the wound to the clavicle happened first, then nothing forced her arm up. It was already there, correct? True. Then the question becomes what forced her arm down? Well, you could. There are two guns, aren't there? Yes. Do you believe there were two people shooting? That is my understanding, yes. And you've already indicated that there could be simultaneous shooting going on? Yes. Now, did you ever examine the three pieces of plastic bracelet that were retrieved from the scene? No. Even after I questioned you about it at the pretrial hearing, you didn't ask to look at it? No. Doesn't interest you in that, is that right? I can't say doesn't interest you, is that right? Sorry. I can't do anything about it. It's not a question of being interesting. I can't make use of it in my reconstruction. Well, don't you think the angle of which things this is a plastic bracelet that Mrs. Menendez was wearing and it shattered into multiple pieces and were collected at the scene. Don't you think that's important? Don't you think that would help recreate where her hand was, how it was shot, where it was where those pieces landed might help recreate where her arm was? Just saying, especially for someone who knows physics. And this guy, this is more his expertise than human bodies. A plastic bracelet breaking into three pieces is more of his expertise than ballistics uh, uh, wounds on human bodies. Anyways, so you understand, do you not, that the three pieces of bracelet were found, one behind the east, one in front of the east French door behind the couch, correct? I believe you're correct, yes. So one behind the west section of the couch in front of the bookcases on strike that behind the east section of the couch in front of the bookcases that were then on the east wall. Yes, in front of the east wall bookcases, I do recollect that. And the other one lodged right next to Mrs. Menendez on the sofa. Do you remember that? Somewhere on the sofa. I'm uncomfortable being terribly precise for you. I have another one of these big ones, Your Honor. What's the next number? The court says we're at 303. Exhibit 303, I'm going to write, Mr. Levin, I'm going to write 303 below the number 5 in the corner of this board. Your Honor, thank you. Now, that board, there's been marked 303. In the third column from the left, the second and third image down are your illustrations of this shot that you call shot number 5, correct? Yes. And that shows that the way you have envisioned Mrs. Menendez's body position at that point is she is flat on her back with her right leg opened up and her left leg bent, correct? That's the way that's the way we have her shown, but with my previous caveats about positions and whatnot, that he can't be precise and he doesn't know how she got there, just that she's there. So I want to put shot 5 in front of the jury so they're not confused by 6. Now, you have not accounted in your testimony at all, Dr. McCarthy, for the damage to the east French door, the one that, if you're looking at the couch, is on the left. Is that right? I have not assigned it a specific shot. That is correct. And the first paragraph, which is in the one photograph column, that damage, correct? Yes. And it's the pane of glass diagonally across from it, the other door that has what you called the fully missed shot. The lower and east. The one I'm talking about is lower and east. Yes. All right. In this photograph, lower and to the right, correct? Yes. Now, do you see the area that's depicted in this first photograph in the second column as indicating that space, that 26 or 27 inches behind the couch and the French doors? Yes. And are you aware that cluster of evidence, item labeled 21, were found there? I assumed that from the 21 tag in the picture. And do you know what 21 consisted of? I have not audited 21, no. We have a giant chart that tells us. If I were to tell you that there's been testimony that 21 was a piece of the bracelet, Appellate, number buck, a number 4 buck, and a piece of wadding, does that refresh your recollection, assuming you knew that at one time? If I knew that once, I had forgotten, but that's fine. I have no contradictory testimony to offer you. And do you see dark spots on the wood of the east door? I know, it's shiny. There's blood evidence on that door. There's blood evidence on the door, and isn't there also blood spattering and blood evidence on the door at the base of the door? Yes. Now, going back to the second column, do you see the number 16? Yes. Did you understand that 16 was another piece of the same white plastic bracelet? I haven't attempted to fit the pieces together, but it looks similar. Ms. Abramson says, Barry, would you get 24? It's in back. Try to hold it up for the moment until we get the chart out. Will you accept my statement that 16 is a piece of white bracelet? He says it looks similar. And you didn't put it in your diagram, but are you aware that there was an ottoman at the end of the east section of the couch? I do recollect some additional furniture that I haven't diagrammed. I'm the wrong person to ask if it was an ottoman. Well, do you know what an ottoman is? I know what I would refer to one as. Back east, we call them hassocks. I have no idea. Do you know what a hassock is? I will show my age, he says. I didn't say back old, I said back east, okay? We have down here for the moment Exhibit 24, which is the schematic that shows where various items of evidence were found. Can you see that? Yes, I can. And you can see where 16 is in front of the ottoman or the hassock. Yes. You understand that this brown line is the brown line is the east wall of the room. It would be in the right place to be that, yes. And there were bookcases there before your engineers went there to measure it. Yes. And that shows the relative position, in fact, of 24, Mrs. Menendez's body within the long arm of the couch. Now, as she is shown positioned in this diagram, yes. Okay, now it also shows, does it not, number 5? Yes. And it shows number 5 as being something near Mrs. Menendez? Yes. Fair statement, okay? It's on the next cushion, but over on his end. Maybe it is. Showing you the second photograph in the far right column on 303, do you recognize this to be the right arm and sleeve area of Mr. Menendez? Yes. And do you see this object, this white crescent-shaped object? I do. And then, as we go closer in, do you see that to be another segment of the white plastic bracelet? They look similar. I can't positively link them up for you, but the similarity is obvious. What's this? I'm sorry. What's this I'm pointing right next to it? It looks like a power piston. It looks like one of those flat plastic disc wads from a number 4 buck, doesn't it? Yes. And I think, as you've previously testified, well, perhaps you haven't testified. I strike that, Your Honor. You looked at some point at the ballistics evidence in this case. Sorry, I got an itch, and it's hard to talk when you're scratching your lip. Yes, he says. He looks at the ballistics evidence. So you noticed that there were paper wads and these plastic disc wads. Yes, the pistons and the wads. Yes. And it is your state of mind that a number 4 buck round from that era would have had one of those plastic discs, which you call a power piston, and at least one of those paper wads, correct? Yes. And do you know what kind of wad the wad of 21 is? It looks like a plastic one from this view. Okay, we might have to get it out and show you. Now, if that bracelet were struck by pellets during the shot that you're calling number 5, it's of no evidentiary interest to you whatsoever that the bracelet was found in the 3 places that we've shown. It's of no evidentiary use. In other words, it's totally consistent with my diagram of the shot. Well, then why wouldn't you show it if it helps show the consistency of the shot? I don't know. If the bracelet were here and struck by pellets, not on this shot, but in the next shot, which hits the hand. Wait, wait, wait. We're talking about this shot. He says the bracelet would have had to fall down the wrist to get involved with this shot. It's a big bracelet. Okay, we'll put it down on the wrist. It gets struck. It shatters. The part could have gone in precisely the pattern parts would just go everywhere. Well, fly over the cushion or over the couch in 2 directions. If the shot, 10 different pellets, you would get 10 different scatter patterns. But you didn't, and okay. Well, what about the fact that the bracelet and pellet and wad is right below the broken hole of the east door? Does that have any significance to you? You cannot tie that wad to that shot, nor can you tie the plastic wad to this shot, or at least I can't. You can't. I don't think anybody else can either, he says. If a criminalist comes and qualifies as a criminalist and states to him it is strong evidence that the shot that hit her arm and hit her bracelet broke that door, that's, should I say, expertise, correct? Objection argumentative and irrelevant as phrased. Sustained, objection sustained. Now, in fact, you never even bothered looking at the bracelet, right? That's correct. There's no use that could be made of it. So, you don't know whether or not that bracelet shows that it actually was struck by a pellet, correct? Outside of your representations to me earlier, I do not. And I represented to you that there were lead smears found in the pellet or in the bracelet. So, lead smears found in the bracelet. So, obviously, something hit the bracelet. Obviously. He says yes. And if indeed the pellets that broke the east door were part of the same shot that struck Mrs. Menendez in the right arm and broke the bracelet, wouldn't that be more consistent with her standing up or at least sitting up than lying down in front of the couch the way that you have her pictured? The way you have phrased your hypothesis, you are correct. So he actually just agrees there. If you are going to make that shot break the door, this is not the correct orientation for her, he says. So he just has to get that in there. Thank you. People wish to inquire. Let's move on then to number 6. Number 6 is what the coroner and Dr. Lawrence, accepting the coroner's labeling, call shot number 3, correct? Yes. And are you aware of what Dr. Lawrence indicated was the direction of the path of the wound with respect to the head part of it, the right mandible? I don't have a specific recollection of testimony in that regard if it was present if I was present for it. So again, he's like, I don't know if I was there. So you don't know what he said about it. Is that what you're saying? As I sit here, I don't have a recollection. That's correct. Do you know what Dr. Golden claimed was the trajectory of this wound in the head area? When I say in the head area, I'm excluding for the moment the hands. This I understand is this I understood in your question, but thank you. He indicates trajectory is front to back and slightly slightly upward. Okay, now, do you understand what upward means again? The anatomical position? Yes. And in the anatomical position, slightly upward means just what it says. Instead of being at a 90-degree angle, it's at something less than or greater, actually, than a 90-degree angle. Instead of horizontal, it is upward. Well, the entry is somewhat upward. Yes. He said slightly, correct? That is correct. Now, in what you have demonstrated in 6A, you're showing the shot coming from what's known as, I think, inferior to interior, from foot to head. Inferior to superior. He didn't say inferior to superior, does he, Dr. Golden? He does not. And Dr. Lawrence, as far as you know, didn't say inferior to superior either, correct? I can't testify to I don't have a recollection if I was here. Okay. You're showing the shot coming with all the velocity that you've previously said and need not repeat that the first thing it strikes in your view is her right hand, another one of those Newtonian laws, and then it immediately travels into her shoulder and into her head. Yes. Now, it's true, is it not, Dr. McCarthy, that there are no buckshot pellets in the cranial portion of her head? Besides the one we just discussed, that's correct. Well, the one we just discussed is sitting on the skull. You accept Dr. Lawrence's medical opinion on that, is that right? Still in the cranial area. The cranial area is in the skull. Let's call it the brain case. There's number 4 above the eye sockets beyond the one we've discussed, and that's not, you indicated what Dr. Lawrence testified. It's in the inside of the brain case, not in the part that holds the brain. I wasn't here for the testimony, whatever it was, it was. So isn't it true that if the trajectory you're seeing in number 6A were real, the pellets would just keep going and would go further up in the head than any of the x-rays shown? Well, it would depend whether or not the pellets that hit the face have an unobstructed flight, in which case it would have more energy. If they come out of the hand and it's the hand pellets and they enter the head, then they'd have greatly diminished energy, and I can't differentiate that for you. You understand, Dr. Golden, when he wrote his report right when the bodies were in front of him back in 1989? Mr. Khan says, assumes facts, not an evidence, that he wrote the report while the bodies were in front of him. The court says, sustained. Ms. Abramson says he wrote the report shortly after he performed the autopsy. Do you understand that? Do you not? At the rate he was doing autopsies, I assume that, but I don't have any specific knowledge. Well, why don't you look at the date that he signed the report? You know they signed them. Oh, yes, he signed it on the 13th of September 1989. Yes. So September 13th, 1989, he signed it. The shooting occurred August 20th. So shortly, almost a month later, but still. He says, she says, no, he didn't. What month is 10? He says it's October. She says, okay, so he signed it October 13th. Okay, so now we're getting further from the crimes. But still, he signed it October 13th. And the witness says, that's right. And I guess it was August that he did the autopsy, so he signed it 2 months later. Uh-huh. And he had notes that were contemporaneous. Objection calls for speculation, sustained. In any event, he indicated that as far as he was concerned, at the time the wound number 2, as he calls it, which is the one that you say is coming from the right side, could have been affiliated with the hand wound to number 10, doesn't he? It's not my recollection, but just a moment. Try page 5, the last paragraph before 4. He groups shot 2 and shot 3 involving the head and neck. No, sir. Under 10, he says this is a shotgun wound to the... I'm not asking for 10. I'm asking you to look at page 5. We'll get to 10. Okay, I got it. Page 5 is the bulk of the description of shotgun wound number 3, the mandible, jaw, clavicle, right? There's what number 3 is. It starts on page 4 and goes over to 5. Okay, yeah. Wound 3 starts on page 4 and goes to 5, correct. The last paragraph under wound 3 indicates that it may be related to the shotgun wound on the right hand to be described below, right? It may be related, yes. Okay, that's what it says there. That's all I'm asking. Yes. It says, um, quote, it may be related to the shotgun wound to the right hand to be described below. And it also goes on to say, quote, in addition, the shotgun wound number 2, which is the one higher up on the right side of the face, may likewise be related to the shotgun wound on the right hand. Correct? That's what he says, yes. Are you aware that Dr. Golden testified at the first trial that shots 2 and 3, what you are calling shots 4 and 6, could have been one shot? As I sit here, I don't recollect such testimony. Okay, and then he goes on and describes again the wound to the hand, which he calls 10. Yes. And when he describes that wound, excuse me, my back, I'm sorry. That's quite all right, he says. He describes that on page 10, correct? Yes. And he indicates there, if you manipulate, he calls it the upper extremity, the right hand. It appears related to shotgun wounds 2 and 3, correct? He says it probably is related, yes, involving the head and neck. Probably? Yes, he said it may be broad in opposition to those two wounds. Well, I'm reading from the paragraph that is entitled Opinion on page 10 of his report. Me too. It says, quote, in my opinion, this is not considered an immediately fatal wound, but would be incapacitating because of the fracture of and avulsion of the thumb, as described above by manipulation of the right arm extremity. Appears related to shotgun wounds 2 and 3. Are you reading the same things? That's what he writes. I didn't see the word probably, or I didn't see the word probably there. When he describes the wounds, he says at the beginning of 10, this quote, this is a shotgun wound of the right hand and is probably related by manipulation of the upper right extremity to shotgun wounds 2 and 3 involving the head and neck by, well, he's lumped all three of these wounds, 2, which is her upper face, her upper right face, 3, which is the lower right face, and 10, which is the right hand, into one wound, hasn't he? I guess that wouldn't be my reading of it. I think he indicates there's a probability of a relationship, as he says. Well, let's say his probability is right, then they're all three one shot, right? If what he said were correct, then they'd all be related to the same shot. That would reduce your number of shots from 12 to 11, wouldn't it? Yes, if that were correct. Now, it's your testimony that after shot 5A, whenever that happened, Mrs. Menendez lost the ability to move her right arm. Is that right? After shot 5, she loses her ability to move the right arm. Her humerus is broken, he says. Well, you can't move your arm at all. You can't move it, but the skeletal support that makes volitional positioning possible is gone. So it can't be moved by itself? No, your muscles are still working. It's just your muscles work only in tension. They apply tension around the pivots of the skeleton. If the skeleton is not there, your muscle can contract, but they can't they can't put limbs where you want them because you're not working in combination with the skeleton. Is that anyone, a biomechanical engineer that can break that down? Because I don't think that was scientific at all. She says that means her left arm is not working either, so she can't touch her right arm with her left arm. I'm sorry? Not touch her, why not? Well, that's my question. Her right arm is above, right? Yeah, up here. Right. But she can still move it. She can move it with her left arm. Like pick the arm up with her other arm, you know. So she can still move it with her left arm, and you don't know what range of motion she might still have. Oh, I believe at this point I haven't postulated any injuries that would destroy the use of the left arm, and I guess that in theory she could If Dr. Golden is right and that's what happened, is that 2 and 3 and then all one thing? Then maybe 5 is what came later. In other words, the arm doesn't have to be broken before she receives the face and the mandible and the hands, does it? If the order doesn't change, that is true. But for Dr. Golden to equate all of those 3 wounds, there's going to have to be an agreement on the directionality of all 3 of them. Well, apart from that point, you don't know if the arm was broken before the mandible clavicle was shot or whether it was broken after, do you? With certainty, no. I just postulate that the shot that breaks the humerus could also, in part, Ms. Abramson says, could everything after no be stricken as non-responsive? The court says he's explaining his answer. The witness says, by being horizontal, I don't have a problem. The arm doesn't fall away because of the shatter of the humerus. The momentum can move the broken arm or the shattered humerus right in position for the next shot. Well, let's just assume hypothetically 2 and 3 happened before 5, okay? Is she standing or standing? So this broken arm hasn't happened yet. All she's got is a broken hand, and then the shot comes that breaks the arm. Is that possible? I don't think so. You mean it's anatomically not possible that she could have been standing and received the wound to the face and the wound to the mandible and the wound to the right hand, all in one shot without a very torturous shooting position? No, there's that torturous shooting position again, or geometry, as he called it before. So let's say in 2 shots, you have it in 2 shots, the right face and the right mandible, clavicle, right? Yes. We've got round tracks with 90-degree different directions now. I don't understand what you just said. My question, let's see if I can make it simple. I think you've already conceded, Dr. McCarthy, that you cannot rule out, just as you have her standing for number 4, there's no question in your mind that she's standing for 4, upper right. Is that right? This is a misstatement of my testimony. As I testified before, I've known or shown her standing. Could she have been kneeling slightly? Yes. But she certainly could have been standing, right? I believe so. Yes. Oh my God. I hate this guy. Fine. And I think you've already conceded, and Dr. Lawrence testifies she could have been standing for the right mandible clavicle injuries that Dr. Golden calls number 3. Objection, compound. Sustained. Didn't you already concede that there's nothing anatomic that makes this impossible for her to have been standing for 3, Dr. Golden's 3? Anatomically, there is nothing, that's correct. And anatomically, there is nothing that prevents her from standing for Dr. Golden's 5, which is the double arm wound, correct? Nothing on the anatomy, that is correct. So, based on that, anatomically, she could have had the hand clavicle injury before she had the double arm injury. No, because the shooter would have been in such an ungodly position that's not anatomically probable. It's a practical problem. She can't move. If she moved, the shooter doesn't. But the court says one at a time, Miss Abramson says, I'm withdrawing the question. The court says the witness is answering the question. She says, he's not answering the question. I asked. The court says, let him respond. The witness says, there's nothing anatomically impossible. It is the torturous position the shooter would have had to have been in to make that anatomy work. Ms. Abramson says, so the shooter can't move? He says the shooter certainly can move. It would be, in my opinion, unlikely he would kneel and shoot from the door. Well, you don't have to shoot from the floor to hit someone 5'5" across the arm, Dr. McCarthy. Objection, assumes facts, not an evidence that she's 5'5". And the court says argumentative as phrased. Do you have to be kneeling first of all, do you have to be kneeling on the floor if you were going to shoot me across the forearm and upper arm? No. So why would the shooter have to be kneeling to shoot her? We're talking about the wound to her hand, chin, and supposedly face. Looking at the degree of velocity and the entrance geometry of those pellet indications, it's not a straight on shot. Well, what is the entrance geometry of those pellets? Give me the formula. Well, there isn't a formula. Give me the equation. May the witness finish his answer? The court says yes. The witness says it's clearly inferior to superior, feet to head. Clearly to you, the non-medical expert witness, or the non-medical witness, is that correct? Objection, argumentative, sustained. Now, Dr. Lawrence said in his that it was atypical, and the shape of the entry wound was because the pellets were deformed. Did you hear that testimony? I guess I don't recollect any testimony that the shape of all the wounds were strange because all the pellets were deformed. There may have been such testimony about a specific wound, but I don't even recollect that as I'm sitting here. So you don't recollect him using the word atypical pellet defect. There was some discussion of pellet defects, but I don't have a specific recollection of it good enough to recall it to you, so to swear to you under oath. The question, Dr. McCarthy, is, do you remember Dr. Lawrence using the term atypical pellet defect, those 3 words, yes or no? I don't have a specific recollection of the atypical appended to that. I'm not saying it didn't happen. Is that a no? I don't. The answer is no. I don't have a specific recollection. My God. Thank you. Mr. Levin, could we move this way? It's getting very crowded over here. He pauses. Ms. Abramson says, we're looking at shot 8A. Ms. Towery says, could you tell me what number that is, that exhibit, so I can make a record? Ms. Towery says 8A. Ms. Abramson says yes. Ms. Towery says exhibit 264. Ms. Abramson says 264. Looking at 8A, which is Exhibit 264, Dr. McCarthy, that purports to show a penetrating wound to the left leg of Mr. Menendez, Mrs. Menendez, in the thigh hip area, correct? Thigh area. I'm not comfortable with hip. My God. So Dr. Golden described it as wound number 7, correct? Yes. And he calls it the hip thigh area. He did, yes. Now, if the entry wound, I'd ask you to just look at your chart for a minute. This could actually be done with one question. If the entry and exit wound, as you have, strike that. If the entry and exit wound, as you have shown them here, are reversed, then this illustration is wrong, correct? Yes. Now, it is your testimony that that wound, or what you are calling shot 8, caused a break in the femur, correct? True. Do you need the computer often? Are you looking for things in there? I was just going to look at the figure. You asked me a question. Well, you can look at the figure. Well, her femur is broken. Now, am I going to marry it to the shot or to other shots in the left leg? I think you've already testified it broke her femur here in trial. I'm looking at my notes about when you talked about this. I may have, but what did the coroner say? He asks. He said it fractured the femur. Okay. You want to accept his word on this one? Yes, because I don't think I would have made that kind of draw all on my own. Oh, okay. So you accept that this one fractured the femur. Is that right? Let me make sure that's what he said. Do you think I'd lie to you? Look at page 9, the very last paragraph under opinion. Yes, it's considered incapacitating because of the complete fracture of the left femur. Yes, it's definitely completely fractured. Okay. Now I'm trying to remember what you were saying a few minutes ago about when the skeleton isn't there to hold the muscles, it makes it difficult to move her right arm. Remember that? What you were saying before? But as between 8 and 9, you show this person with a completely fractured femur lifting up her leg, don't you? I'm sorry? You're sorry? You mean you don't understand what I'm saying? Oh, you mean greater angle than the bend of the knee? Is that what lifts the knee? When one is lying on one's back, Dr. McCarthy, what lifts the knees? The thigh bone? Isn't it the muscles in the thigh bone? If your thigh bone is connected structurally, most definitely. I mean, that's what it takes to lift the bottom part of the leg, is the gluteus maximus. It takes that muscle, but it takes the pivot point of the hip and the contraction. In other words, the muscle contracts along the length of the femur, using it as a lever to lift. I don't know why I said lever like I'm in Britain. A lever, like I'm normal, is what I'll say. We have a fractured femur here, right? Yes. So, what you're showing here, after shot, what you're calling shot 8, you get to shot 9. There's no way she could have lifted her leg. If she couldn't lift her hand, she couldn't have lifted her leg. Would that be a fair statement? Yes, and I don't mean to attach any significance. In fact, there may be just a perspective difference in the way that the leg appears. I'm not attaching any more elevation between these two shots. It's not required for my scenario. Well, what is required for your scenario is for some reason that shot 8 came from the east and it's the only one that does. Isn't that true? No. Go back to number 4. Number 4 comes across the coffee table. I can't go back to it, but I hate schlepping. I can go back to it, but I hate schlepping these exhibits around. If you would give me, say, that that is easterly of Kitty in my portrayal and don't have to schlep it back. If that's easterly, that comes from the east as well. I mean, I'm just relying on my recollection now, but well, why don't we do it later? Why don't we rely on these thumbnails? I have all of these notes. No, it comes from the north, basically. The north is that away, north and east. Well, you place the person somewhere on the other side of the coffee table, but east of her but east of her for that shot. Yes, we're talking about the east side of the room for number 8. Yes, right. Thank you. Now, Dr. McCarthy, you said you had all the time to study this, more time than the overworked coroners of LA County. I take it then you looked very carefully at these photos to see what debris, if any, from shot 8 might appear on the carpet where you have your vector line ending. Did you do that? I have looked at the carpet for debris, yes. And did you recollect any right where that vector line ends up on number 8? None I could definitively tie that shot to, and no other. So how about number 9? Well, there's none in that area, is there? There's a huge continuous blood stain in this area. There's a huge continuous blood stain, to be slightly more accurate, where the top half of her body was. Isn't that true? Well, they're certainly right up there, too, yes. So this part, she points, are you saying on the photographs of that shows the carpet where this shot number 8 supposedly ends, that there's material that could identify as coming through or looks like the blowout from this wound? That I could tie to that wound and no other? No. So number 9 is a graze wound, correct? Yes. And you have a graze wound heading downward towards the carpet. Yes. And it looks from this angle. Let me see if I take a look at B to make sure I'm not again. It looks like it's heading, you can't tell from B, but heading down towards the carpet, right? Yes. You don't. Mr. Menendez is dead at this point. This appears, am I correct? I'm assuming that you're thinking an entire round was fired and grazed her calf. Yes. And did you study the carpet area, or the carpet in the area, that would have been under the area of her left leg to see if there's an indication that 27 pellets of number 4 buckshot are there? I couldn't find any defect in the carpet that I could identify that. But carpet is not the best surface to show damage, probably none of the reasons why we use carpet, but I couldn't find anything to identify with that shot. So the same is true with respect to number 8. Couldn't find anything to identify on the carpet with number 8, correct? That's a little strong that I could marry to that shot and no other. Yes. To any shot. There's no pellets found in this zone at all, are there? No loose pellets, or I can't say there were no loose pellets found in that area that were identified as being found in that area. Right. In the photographs, you can't see any pellets. This entire area between where you would have her foot bent and her hip joined, this whole zone, there's no evidence of any pellets at all. There's no evidence in the photograph, in the angles we have, that I can point to. Wow. And now, by the way, did you ever try to line up the following hypothetical that before shot 8 occurs, Mrs. Menendez is already on her right side? Okay. Now, you might not be able to do this. I want to do a hypothetical, a double hypothetical, okay? She's on her right side. The entry and exit are opposite, which are showing here. The entry is actually below, the exit is above, and her leg is bent in such a way that the calf lines up where the graze wound is on the calf, lines up where what you're showing is an exit wound on her lower leg. Do you ever think about that configuration? Yes, and then where is the shotgun splash on the couch? In other words, roll over on the side, bring the leg up, shoot her from the back, and now we have a white couch as a backstop. You mean shot from the back. Shot from the front, he says, is part of your hypothetical. You don't have any splash on the couch from this thing. Objection assumes facts, not an evidence that there is anything. Objection sustained. The answer is stricken. Miss Abramson says, I don't think I can do this one. I'm not going to get to the floor. I probably could. I don't want to. So I'm not sure we're picturing the same thing. Just to show the leg configuration, sort of like this. You see that line? I see your postulation just as a leg postulation. Well, does the calf wound, if what you're seeing on 8A, if the lower part really is the entrance and the higher part is the exit, does the calf wound line up? I don't think that comes out correct geometrically, but I would have to consult the pictures. I don't think that comes out geometrically. I think the wound is too far down for it to come out right. Or if you get the leg extended enough, that it's too far down and the angle is wrong. So you don't consider it. At some point in time, I went through methodically every every combination of those leg wounds. I don't have a specific recollection I don't have a specific recollection what about that didn't work out. Okay, my stupid, I haven't touched my screen and all of a sudden it's flickering. Hold on 1 second. Okay, I think it might be good. So you didn't consider it. At some point in time, I went through methodically every combination of those leg wounds. I don't have a specific recollection what about that didn't work out, but my recollection is it didn't. Well, did you ever envision Mrs. Menendez on the couch reclining to her right on the piled up pillows with on her right side with the left leg, the higher of her two legs? Did you ever picture her getting a leg wound in that position? With so little blood evidence on a white couch? Well, I did not. Fine. But the blood evidence that does appear on the white couch is an area of smear where ordinarily a person's legs would be, correct? I would characterize it more of an area normally between a person's legs. I'm not talking about what's on the face of the couch. Now, not what's on the seat of the couch. I guess I'm uncomfortable then with ordinary. It's on the face of the couch. I don't think it's necessarily indicative of a particular leg position. But it can be indicative of a smear from a bleeding leg, can it not? Or a leg with blood on it, yes. Either way, yes. Now, you do realize from what you saw that she was wearing pants. Yes. I have two more things to do if you want to. The court says, okay, we will take our recess and we'll resume at 3:30. Ms. Abramson says, thank you. That's where I am going to break. We will come back and finish the day of November 16th with this guy tomorrow. I apologize again for not having a video the past 2 days. I just was having recording issues, so apologies. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, do all the YouTubey things, and let me know what you guys think. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye now.